And now for something completely different. Marine engineer. Automotive, yeah, you know, cars and stuff. And the home automation bits and pieces. What is this then? None of that, is it? It's not a boat, it's not a car, it's not home automation. So we have here our camper van. It is a Hymer 564. It's 1990s vintage, early 1990s vintage. So it's an old machine. Now, unfortunately, the owner of this has passed away, and one of my boat customers, has been tasked, well, he sold the house for the owner and sort of doing the clearance, so he's come into possession of this, which hasn't moved. Now, we haven't got any real paperwork for it because unfortunately the chap is deceased, but the last MOT we can find is for 2015, so potentially, conceivably, it's not moved for 7 years or thereabouts. So we were here last week and we got the engine running. And that's all we've done so far. So what I want to do before we go anywhere in it, because it needs to be moved, this house has been sold, it needs to go. We're going to have a look at the brakes. We're going to give it a quick service. And at some point we're going to do the cam belt, but not right now. We're just going to get it off the driveway for the moment. So that's a case of the brakes look horrible. So we'll do a quick service, quick oil change, all those bits and pieces, then we'll whip the wheels off, we will flush the brake fluid through, some new fresh brake fluid, easy for you to say, bleed it, and all being well, we will take it for a spin. So first things first, well, we don't really know how old it is because we haven't got the paperwork, but it's at least 30 years old. So the first thing is, I don't trust it. What I mean by that is, I've got a jack in here, and that was making creaky noises. So we've got a jack in there, and that's a 3-ton jack. And I've got a 3-ton axle stand in there, and I've got another 3-ton axle stand in there. Because I'm going to go underneath it, and I'm not going to go underneath it with the wheels off. I'm leaving the wheels on because the tyres, you can see it, the tyres are shocking. All this cracking there. So, yeah, don't trust it. It'll be fine. First thing you can do is change your oil filter, which is in the most inaccessible place. Really? That's my leg. That's the front of the van. Oh my gosh! There's an engine in my face, and there's an oil filter right there. Look. Could you have put that in a worse place? Well, quite possibly, but that's not a great place. And then here are the brakes from the backside. It's not great looking, is it? So we're going to clean all that up, and as I say, swap the fluid out, bleed the fluid out, and we'll go from there. It's a funny thing because it's kind of a cross between commercial vehicles and domestic cars. So far I've done the oil filter, which I won't show you because it's back underneath. I've taken the mat out, and I've also done the fuel filter. Nice shiny new fuel filter. There we go. So now we're looking at the brakes. The brakes. So, I mean, the disc is, it's not bad actually. It looks bad, but it isn't. There's no real ridge here, so there's not much wear on them. And the brake pads themselves also look very new. There's lots and lots of meat on those, so that's not a problem. You can still even see still see the writing on there. So I don't know. I'm going to give them a clean, and probably put a bit of copper grease in there where the pads slide. So we'll pull the caliper off and just have a quick look at that. But it's just filthy. And then I've sprayed up my bleed nipples with a bit of fluid, the old loosening juice. And we'll see if we can crack those open. They're very rusty and horrible. If we can get them open, then I will do the brake bleed. You look at the fluid itself, actually is very clean as well. So although it's a bit old, it's hardly been used since it was last serviced. So that's kind of nice in some respects. But yeah, we'll whip that caliper off and have a look and see what it looks like inside. So what we're going to do now is bleed the brakes. As I had mentioned, I managed to get those bleed screws open. Just the bottom one's been a bit mullered. Here's an interesting point. It's a bit of a mix of imperial and metric, this van. So down here, the caliper retaining bolt, that one just there, as a 1/2 inch, and the bleed nipples. You can find one. There we go. That's a 5/16. Now the bottom one, a 5/16, has been rounded off. So the actual size ideally would be 932. Can't get a 932 spanner. Well, you probably can actually, but they're difficult. So I've managed to jiggle it and faff around, and we've got it to work with a 5/16. But you've got to be so gentle, because if you break one of those off, that's the end of that. Right. So I mentioned that the brake fluid wasn't a bad colour. Here's the old fluid. I've taken some out of the reservoir. You always take a bit out. And you compare it to the new fluid. It's quite dark, isn't it? It is quite dark. So it's worth doing. There are many ways to skin a cat, so they say. I've never skinned a cat. I like kitty cats. I wouldn't skin one. And in the same way, there's many ways to do a brake bleed. There's a 1-man, there's a 2-man, there's the little ball bearing in a pipe, there's looping pipes into bottles half full of fluid, and then there's this one, which is dead easy. It's a Gunson kit. We've got the thing, here we go. So if Gunson still exists, Gunson Easy Bleed is the name of the thing. And it's really simple. What you do is you have a wheel with some tyre with some air in it. You pump the air in the black hose. It goes into the top of the bottle. In the bottle is fresh brake fluid. The clear or the yellowy plastic tube goes all the way down to the bottom. So when you apply air pressure to the top, it pushes the fluid up out of here and into the reservoir, the master cylinder reservoir. So that's under pressure. They say maximum of 20 psi. That tires about 18 psi because I don't want to blow any seals. That pressurizes the whole system. So when you open your bleed nipple down here, all it does is it just forces the fluid out that pipe and into a bottle, obviously. So it's really, 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 really simple. Just make sure that you don't run out of air pressure, and crucially you don't run out of fluid. Now, you may have noticed, those who know about brakes, I've got 2 hoses there, and I've got 2 bleed nipples, and it's the same on the other side. So I mentioned earlier that these things are a sort of mix of commercial and domestic. I've not really seen a PLG car like this. So what this has, it's got a 3-circuit system. Your car will have a 2-circuit system. So here we are, we've got 1, 2, and then round here there's a 3rd pressure connection. So your car will be split front left, rear right, and front right and rear left. So if either system fails, you will still have 1 braked wheel on the front, 1 braked wheel on the back, 1 braked wheel on the left, and 1 braked wheel on the right. So that's quite clever. For some reason on this one, they've got this 3-circuit system. So you've got these 2 both do the front. So each front has its own system, circuit, if you like. And then this one at the back, this one here, if you can see him down there, goes off to this 4-way splitter here. And that also goes left wheel front, left wheel front, right wheel front, 2 pipes, and then 1 pipe goes all the way to the back to do the rear brakes, and then it's split again at the back. I can see some advantages of this system, namely if you lose any one system, you still retain front brakes on the left and the right, so you don't have any dissymmetry at the front, which I guess is important for a heavier vehicle. Back brakes don't really do much anyway, except they keep the back of the vehicle straight, so we're not so worried about that, but it keeps that directional control should you lose one of your front brake circuits. Any one of those 3 can fail and you will still have both front brakes, albeit reduced capacity on potentially one side, but you'll still have that. The downside, of course, is a lot of added complexity. You've got this 4-way splitter valve here. You've got another 2-way splitter on the back axle, which we'll look at when we do that. You've then got 2 hoses at the front and 2 sets of rigid brake lines with these connections. So there's a huge amount of connections, and I've got to do twice the amount of bleeding because I have to bleed this top one and then I have to bleed this bottom one, which is not a real problem, but it's just more complicated. But anyway, first time I've seen that. I'm sure it's perfectly normal with all kinds of other vehicles, and I just don't know what I'm talking about, or certainly I don't have a lot of experience with camper vans. So let's bleed the brakes. Okay, so all we do is to just swap the spanner around from ring to open-ended. I'm just going to hold this so it doesn't fall over, and we open this, and you may be able to see that fluid now coming down the pipe. And all we're going to do is wait until that fluid changes to that nice clear colour that we had in that new bottle. It's quite slow because I've kept the pressure quite low. I don't want to, it's an old system, I don't want to blow any seals out here. And as I say, we need to just monitor the pressure and in the wheel and the quantity of brake fluid. We don't want to run out. It's not going to take much because these lines are very thin. Oh, there it goes actually. That's just gone to a nice, I don't know if you noticed that, but it's gone to a nice clear colour now. Very nice clear colour. There are no bubbles. Bubbles are dangerous. So we will now nip this back up like this, and I'm just going to do it very lightly because open-ended spanners are the devil's work with these things, and then we'll do it properly with the ring end. Now what you really want is a flare nut spanner for this, or a 6-point hex, but it's 5/16. I haven't got a 6-point 5/16, so we're gonna have to do it with this, but it'll be fine, it'll work. And then we do this one, and then we do the other side, and then we do the back, and then it's done. Easy peasy. It's the next day and we're back on the van. It's 9 o'clock in the morning. Just before we start, have a look. Have a look at my work environment. January. Still got the moon there. Hello, moon. That'd do, wouldn't it? That's nice. Talking about the brake system then, I mentioned I'd show you the back end of the vehicle. So this is what it looks like. That single line from the four-way distributor at the front comes to this here, and this is a brake bias valve, or a brake proportioning valve if you like. It's connected to this really rusty arm, which is connected to the rear beam axle. So what that does, as the weight of the vehicle increases and it compresses the suspension, obviously it moves this arm and it increases the amount of brake pressure that it allows through to the rear brakes. So the heavier it is at the back, the more brake pressure we get through. That goes up to this little bit here, then you've got a flexi line, and then another one of those splitters, two-way this time. As I say, the only problem with this setup is its complexity. There's more to it. Oh, incidentally, I said it was a 3-circuit system. I don't think it is. I think it's a 2-circuit system. So I'm unfamiliar with these vans, but it looks like it's only a 2-circuit, but it still works the same. One circuit does the fronts, left and right. The other circuit does the fronts, left and right, that second part of the caliper and all the back brakes. So you're still in the situation where a loss of any one of those pipes, you will still have both front brakes operational. So that's good. Right, what else we've done is, and I can't show you right now, I've bled the rear brakes. I've managed to leave a bit of tissue paper up there, look. Naughty. Grab that. So we've bled the rear brakes in exactly the same way as the front. This little dampness on the back here is actually breakthrough from where I bled it. A little bit leaked, so we don't have a leak as such in the system. That side was all fine. We took the drum off and had a look, and like the front brakes, the drum is 7 years old but 0 miles on it, brand new, as are the shoes. So it's obviously been maintained prior to it being sat here for 7 years. Now we've got a problem on the left side though. This one here, I can't get. It's bled it fine. No issues with the bleeding. I've done it again. Look, I've left a bit of tissue up there as well. Anyway, but I can't get the drum off. I cannot get this drum off. And you see the inspection plate at the back here that I've pinged off. You can see the shoes through there, so we can see that again the shoes are in good nick. But I can't get the drum off. Now, it's seized on the shoes. Quite often it seizes on the hub, or you have a ridge on the drum, which we don't have because they're brand new, I think. And I've backed off the auto adjuster, self adjuster all the way, so I have a horrible feeling that the wheel cylinder is stuck, partially extended. I can turn the wheel with some resistance, but I can't get the drum off. The pads are too stuck. So this has got to be driven for about 10 kilometres next week because the new owners of the house are coming. So that has to be done, and I have to do the cam belt, the timing belt before we go. So the next job will be timing belt. We're probably going to have to just drive it with that brake as it is and just monitor the temperature, stop every 5-10 minutes and just check that it's not getting too hot. When we get there, it's going to be a big job because, you know what, drum brakes, I hate them. Just put discs on, they're so much less grief. Drums they're ineffective, they're inefficient, and they're a pain to maintain. Discs are so easy. Anyway, whinge. We're going to go and do the bleed the front left caliper. That's the last one to do, and I did say on the front right I was going to show you pinging off the caliper, and I forgot to do that, so we'll show you how to do that on the lift in a moment. Right, so taking the caliper off, it's a 1/2 inch bolt here which you counter hold from behind, and I don't know what size it is, but a 17mm fits. It's probably an Imperial. This is going to fit good enough because I don't have any Imperial spanners with me, of course not. And this is very, very loose. They generally are, these things, sort of 30 to 40 Newton meters. They're not the caliper pivot pin bolts or caliper pin bolts tend to be quite loose. So that comes off, and then hopefully we can just prise this off. Hopefully. Go. I've disconnected, it's got a brake wear sensor, so I've just disconnected that. And we're going to pull this up like this, and what we'll do is we'll just remove the pads. So as you can see, they're almost new. I mean, there's a huge amount of wear left on them, still got the names on them. And then we put these down. I've got a bit of paper down here because I don't want to get any dirt on the face of the pads. So there's that one, and there's this one, and what we'll do is we'll give this a clean up with a wire brush, and then we will put some copper grease on the sliding surfaces, so kind of just lubricating everything. But again, the disc is very rusty, but brand new, and these are also 7 years old but brand new, so not a problem. Give it a clean and a lube and put it back together, easy peasy. So we pulled the pads out, as you saw. We've got copper grease here, up here, and just a little bit on the back of the pads for the anti-squeal. And if you're lucky, this will go back on without having to retract the pistons. Just keep an eye on your wire. And then just at the bottom here, make sure it clears there. Oh, look at that. That went on quite nice and easily. The other thing we'll look at is these flexi hoses right here, because we've got flexi lines. Again, they actually look in good nick. I guess old, but they haven't seen much use. So that's nice to put the bolt back in there. Again, counter hold it as it goes back in. I don't have any torque figures, which is a real shame because I do like to do things with a torque wrench, but I haven't got any manuals for this, so it will be not very tight. As I say, at the last car I did, it was 49 Newton meters, so not hugely tight. Certainly this little 3/8 breaker bar will be enough. You saw it was there was nothing to it when it came off, so just give it a bit of a nip. like that. It's a short bar, so a bit of a lean on it. I'm just going to spray some contact cleaner in here, and then we'll plug that back in, and then we will bleed. Stop, please. Bleeding is the same as the other side. I'm just going to show you very quickly how I'm going to attack these nipples, which will have been closed for at least 7 years and quite possibly a lot longer. I'm not going to use this. I'm not going to use it because it's a 12-point hex, 12-point spanner, and I'm not going to use this open-ended spanner either. What I need to use on here is a 6-point. I don't have a 6.5/16. What I've got is a 6.5/16 socket. So we're going to have to use this just to crack it. Now you can see it's already wet. Both of them are wet, and that's not a leak. That's me using my bit of the old motion lotion, some loose juice, penetrant spray. Just sprayed that on. I actually put it on yesterday before I left, and a bit more this morning, so I let it work in. And what we're going to do, first thing we're going to do, is try and tighten it a little bit. And I don't even need to get any motion, really. Nice tight fit. You want something that's really tight, because if it slips on here, or worse, if you snap that off, if it slips you can't bleed it, if you snap it off you can't drive the vehicle because it will leak. So and you've got to be so gentle, so gentle. I'm just going to give it a little. So that's the tighten way. And I'm just going to go unfasten. Okay, and we'll go tighten up again. And loosen. Oh, there we go. That's cracked. Okay, so now we've got it cracked. See that? There we go. Lovely, lovely, lovely. We can take this off because now it's cracked. When we put the little blue tube on, obviously I can't use a socket. So now it's cracked, I can actually, in fact, it's leaking already. We can use the 12-point or the open-ended. Let's nip that back up again. In fact, we'll be using the open-ended with the tube on there. That's it. Bleed is the same as before. I won't show you because it is exactly the same as we've done before. Easy peasy. Okay, so that is part one, if you like, complete of this little project of getting this motorhome back on the road after being off the road for 7 years or thereabouts. We've done an oil and filter change, air filter change, diesel filter change, checked over the whole braking system and flushed through and bled the brakes, flushed through with fresh fluid. We've obviously got that problem with the rear left corner, which we'll address at a later date. The next thing to do is change the timing belt. Got two on this vehicle. There's a timing belt and there's an injection pump belt, and they actually run one on top of the other, so you do them both at the same time. That will be the next video, which is coming up in just a moment.